Hello and welcome to another video. My name is Boxiest, and today we're going to continue the What If series. What if events had gone differently? And in this What If, we're going to change the history of Cobra Kai. What if Hawk was the Miyagi-Do captain during the events of Cobra Kai Season 6? So in this timeline, the events of Cobra Kai Season 6 would still happen. Miyagi-Do would still make it to the Seikai Taikai, and they would be surprised to see Kreese and Cobra Kai there, and they would be heartbroken to see Tori and Cobra Kai. The Seikai Taikai would continue. Robbie would still want to talk to Tori, but Tori still wouldn't want to talk to the Miyagi-Dos. Quan would still be challenging the other dojos to a kicking competition, and Robbie would still accept Quan's challenge. So those events would stay the same. Eventually the Captain's War Challenge would begin. Miyagi-Do would be on defense, and they would still be doing Protect the Egg, but Tori and Quan would still want to go after the Miyagi-Dos. Quan would still go after Robbie, and Robbie and Quan would still fight. Devin and Dimitri would still go down. Robbie would still be distracted by Tori, so Quan would still take Robbie down, and Miyagi-Do would be out. So only the Cobra Kais and the Iron Dragons would remain. The rest of the Iron Dragons would still walk off, and Zara and Axel would be left to fight the Cobra Kais. Zara and Axel will still take down Quan and Tori, so the Iron Dragons would win. The Seikai Taikai would continue. Miyagi-Do would still have to knock the other dojo off the platform, but Miyagi-Do wouldn't do so well. Johnny would still be disappointed in his students, but the Miyagi-Do students wouldn't want to listen to Johnny. Miguel would still confront Robbie. He would still say that he was blowing his chance to be captain. Miyagi-Do would still have to fight out Dublin Thunder. Robbie and Sam would still start off, and they would fight their opponents, but Robbie would still be distracted by Tori, so he would still be knocked off. So Devin would join Sam on the platform. Devin and Sam would still fight their opponents. The fight would continue, and Sam would still be knocked off. So Hawk would join Devin, and much like in the original timeline, Devin would still sacrifice herself to save Hawk. So Dimitri would join Hawk on the platform. Hawk and Dimitri would still fight their opponents, and Dimitri would still knock Hawk off the platform, and he would also be knocked off. Miguel would finish the fight, so Miyagi-Do would win. This is when Robbie would realize that Miguel was right, and that he needed to give up the captain spot. So Robbie would want to give up the captain spot to Miguel, but much like in the original timeline, Carmen would still be rushed to the hospital, and Johnny and Miguel would have to leave. So Johnny would call for Kenny to take Miguel's place, and since Miguel left, Robbie would want to give up the captain spot to Hawk. He would say that he was too distracted over Tori, and that Miyagi-Do needed a captain that was focused, so Hawk would be the Miyagi-Do captain. The Miyagi-Do students would still go explore Barcelona, and they would still be at the tapas bar. Robbie and Sam would both be drinking. Sam would be surprised that Robbie gave up the captain spot, but Robbie would say that he wasn't in the right headspace, and that with Miguel gone, Hawk needed to be captain. This is when the Cobra Kais would show up, and Sam would still go outside to get some air. The Cobra Kais and the Miyagi-Dos would still have their rivalry, and Quan would make fun of Robbie because he was no longer captain. Quan would want to mess with Hawk, but unlike Robbie, Hawk wouldn't ignore him, and he would fight back. So Quan and Hawk would start fighting in the bar. Some of the Cobra Kais and Miyagi-Dos would get involved, but Robbie and Tori and a couple of the other dojos would want to stop the fight, and eventually Cobra Kai and Miyagi-Do would be kicked out of the tapas bar, and once they were kicked out, Miyagi-Do and Cobra Kai would go their separate ways. So that night would be pretty uneventful. Sam would still be walking down the beach, and she would still run into Axel. She would still compliment Axel on his kata, and the interaction between Sam and Axel would stay the same. Eventually Miguel, Johnny, and Kenny would come back to Barcelona, and Kenny would still take Devin's place, and Miguel and Johnny would be surprised that Robbie was no longer captain, but Robbie would tell them the same things that he told Sam. So the Seikai Taikai would continue. Miyagi-Do would still fight Furia de Pantera. Dimitri would still start off, and he still wouldn't be doing so well. So in this timeline, Dimitri would tag in Hawk. Hawk would continue the fight, and he would get a point, and Hawk would tag in Sam. Sam would continue fighting, and she would still get a point, so Sam would tag in Devin. Devin would continue fighting, but Furia de Pantera would get a point on Devin, so Devin would tag in Miguel, and Miguel would get the final point, so Miyagi-Do would beat Furia de Pantera 3-1 in this timeline. And during the next team match, Miyagi-Do would fight Redentores. Miguel would start off, and he would tag in Hawk, and Hawk would land the first point, and he would tag in Dimitri. Dimitri would continue the fight, and he would get the second point, and eventually he would tag in Robbie. Robbie would continue to fight, and he would get the final point, so Miyagi-Do beat Redentores in this timeline, and they would still advance in their matches. So Miyagi-Do and Cobra Kai wouldn't face off. The Seikai Taikai would continue. Cobra Kai would still fight Tiger Strike, but in this timeline, Cobra Kai would be focused, and they would beat Tiger Strike. So both Miyagi-Do and Cobra Kai would make it to the semifinals. Season 6 would continue. The semifinals would begin. Quan and Diego would still fight, but Quan would still defeat him. Zara and Maria would fight, but Zara would still defeat Maria. Axel would be fighting Hawk, and Hawk would only use offense against Axel, but Axel's defense would be better. Eventually Axel would go on offense, and he would get points against Hawk, so Axel would defeat Hawk in this timeline. Sam and Tori would fight, and they would both use a combination of offense and defense. The match would be close, so in this timeline, Tori would defeat Sam, so she would advance to the finals. Quan and Axel would fight, but Axel would be more defensive in this fight, and he would knock down Quan. Quan would get even more mad, and he would try to go for Axel's head, but Axel would block his attack. Axel would land some points on Quan, and he would defeat him. Zara would fight Tori. Zara would be aggressive, and she would land some points on Tori. Tori would be using a combination of offense and defense. She would manage to land a point on Zara, so Zara would get more aggressive, and she would defeat Tori. So the Iron Dragons would win. Miyagi-Do and Cobra Kai would go home in defeat. Sensei Kim and her students would go back to Korea, and Tori would go back to the valley. Even though Miyagi-Do lost, Miyagi-Do would remain open, and Tori would rejoin Miyagi-Do, and things would be peaceful in the valley. And that is where I'm gonna end this what if. Thank you guys for watching. What do you guys think would have happened if Hawk was the new Miyagi-Do captain during the events of Cobra Kai Season 6? Let me know in the comments below. YouTube lets me know that the majority of you are not subscribed, so if you guys could subscribe, that would be much appreciated. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure to like this video, subscribe, and turn on post notifications. And I'll see you guys next time.